Morning, Mike Gill comes on Good Morning NFC East. Mike Gill from the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN Radio is in the house. Mike, how did you enjoy that game yesterday?
I didn't hear you say that again.
How did you enjoy that game yesterday, Mike?
Oh, man, it was it's one of those games where you only get so many Sundays throughout the course of a season, and you took away the drama pretty early. That was a classic addition of the talent disparity on the field was quite visible. You don't see that a lot in the NFL. Like, you can see that there's a better team, but you don't see it so apparent. The talent disparity between those two teams was quite on display yesterday. The Giants just don't have anything. We talked a lot about it on my show leading up to the game. Is they just don't have anything. And to find a path to victory for them, they would almost have to play a flawless game. And this is why NFL fans, you just can't get into the aesthetics of what a game looks like, because just because the Eagles dominated that game, there's still work to be done. That game is now over. Dallas, as ugly as their game went, they won, and the pressure continues to stay on you.
Even though the pressure is still on the Eagles to kind of wrap things up, what's the word I'm looking for here, Mike? I guess you could say that the schedule is shortening because there's only 4 games left now, and Eagles go 3-1. It doesn't matter what anybody else does, but there is theoretically, if they go 2-2 with Dallas or Minnesota slip up again, it's over.
Yeah, I mean, the sand is definitely going through the hourglass for these teams. There's no question, but they are keeping the pressure on. I mean, you are in no different position than you were yesterday. Minnesota losing obviously changed the dynamics for them, but I'm talking about this comes down to Philadelphia against Dallas in the division, obviously, and for the number 1 seed. I never was a big believer in Minnesota. They do have a very easy schedule coming up, and there's no reason they shouldn't sweep out, even though they lost yesterday. Even them losing, the pressure still stays on. But, yes, the sand is running through the hourglass for these teams. And obviously fans love the aesthetics of a game, and they love to jump on what that means. To me, it means nothing. But if you look simply at aesthetics, Philadelphia looks like they are moving quite in the right direction. Dallas looked like they are stumbling a little bit. And obviously Minnesota struggled. The interesting team would be San Francisco, who just blew the doors aesthetically off of Tampa Bay yesterday.
Oh, yeah. First off, we were talking about the NFC South a little earlier in the show and how bad that division is. It almost seems unfair that the winner of this division gets a home playoff game because they all stink. And I'll tell you what, there's a team that still has a shot, Mike Gill, and I wrote them off 2 months ago when they fired Matt Rule, and that's Carolina. But here they are. They're a game behind Tampa Bay. Oh, and they beat Tampa Bay. So if they have the same record, guess who gets the tiebreaker right now?
Yeah, I know this discussion seemingly comes up yearly too. How does they get a home game? I have no problem with it. It's just the way it is. I mean, the NFL is a league that is built on the first goal is winning your division. If we take that goal away, what are we then having divisions for? You're stripping rivalries. You're stripping the goal of winning your division to earn something. If you're a wild card team and you're not good enough to go on the road and beat a team that doesn't have a pretty record, then that's on you. We've seen many times the team that's 7-8-1 or 7-9. We've seen it happen where they win in the playoffs. If you're not good enough to beat a team with a losing record, maybe you should look in the mirror. So I have no problem. This seems to come up once in a while. Things happen. Injuries occur. Seasons go awry, and your record isn't. But we are so stuck as a society of NFL fans of this team's record is this, therefore they must be this. Sometimes teams that don't have Carolina is a classic case. There was a couple of years ago, they had a ton of injuries. They got off to a terrible start. Then they won 4 straight to end the year in December. They got into the playoffs at 7-8-1 and won a playoff game. Their 7-8-1 record says they weren't all that good. That team was pretty good. They had a lot of injuries that year that caused them to be 7-8-1. Now, Tampa Bay has had a ton of injuries this year, but that being said, they're just not all that good anymore. Age has caught up to them, but I think the injuries have been a factor as to why they are where they are. Nobody saw this coming for them.
No, I certainly didn't. I thought their offensive line would still hold fort, even with they got a guy like Shaq Mason to replace Alex Kappa, which it looked like that wasn't going to be that big of a loss, even though Kappa was good for them. But again, you're right. All the injuries on the offensive line, the defense has aged, the receivers have aged, the quarterback, we all know how old he is. But yeah, I mean, there's no reason the Philadelphia Eagles or the Dallas Cowboys, if they play them that first game, which it's going to be one of them. They should go into Tampa and just basically knock the barn door down and just steamroll the place.
Yeah, and how many times this goes back to the aesthetics of a game and what happens in a game and why we have to stop trying to incorporate what happens one week into the next. Tom Brady takes them down. They score twice in the last 2 minutes of that game. Oh, are the Buccaneers back? Did they finally get? No, they're not. Forget what you saw last week, because now you're facing a different team with different talent and different schemes and a different way to try to approach you. I don't understand how NFL fans watch these games every single week and then want to incorporate what they saw. Well, they look good last week. Who cares? Dallas beat Minnesota 40-3 2 weeks ago, and then they almost lost to Houston at home. It does not matter. The Houston Texans had no business being in that game yesterday, yet they had a good game plan and they executed. And quite frankly, they probably should have won the game. They seemed at the end that they weren't too interested in closing that game out, but that's their prerogative. I can't sit there and fault them in the direction that their season's going. But look, I don't look at Dallas and say, well, they almost lost to the Texans. They can't beat us now. They can beat anybody. That team, no matter what aesthetically they look like on Sunday, they are still very dangerous.
Why did the Cowboys struggle against Houston that badly? Like, that's a team they should have beat 50-20, if we're going to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's classic look-aheads or taking teams easy. This team's 1-10. Maybe we'll take a foot off the gas a little bit. We don't prepare as much. We're not as focused. Give them some credit. They came in. Pierce, they ran the ball pretty well. They made plays. Houston was missing 2 receivers. I mean, they were banged up as well. But just things like that happen. You just don't play well. Look, Philadelphia is clearly more talented than Washington, but the way they played that night not only kept Washington in the game, it gave them the game. So when the Eagles played Houston, they're clearly more talented than Houston is, but the way the tempo and style of that game went made it an unaesthetically. Houston has the ability to do that because they can run the ball. They do have the kid Pierce, and I thought he hit the rookie wall right around the time the Eagles played them. He seemed like he was a little tired, and maybe he's kind of got that second win here. They rushed the passer a little bit that night, so things like that happen, right? Where for that day at that time, it works for them. But if Dallas plays them again next week, they beat them 50-10.
This is what I think is crazy right now about the NFC. And I wrote about this in my own reactions piece. I put the Lions will make the playoffs, and I said it's no reaction. But when I looked into it, boy, did they got a shot, Mike Gill. They have a legit shot at the playoffs right now.
Yeah, I think their percentage chances, whatever you read into them, jumped from 7% to 21%. I think right now they're playing the best football out of the 2 teams, Seattle and the Giants. I think they can probably catch and pass. They have the tiebreaker against the Giants. So you have an opportunity, if you're Detroit, to have some, to have probably a situation. Now, the tie is interesting. They have the head-to-head tiebreaker with the Giants, but their records cannot be the same unless, of course, Detroit ends up tying down the stretch here. We were talking about this the other day on our show, which was if Detroit and New York tie, the head-to-head battle, they wouldn't tie. They can't tie because the head-to-head battle is almost out the window for those.
Essentially, in a way, well, no, I'll say it's essentially they're 2 games back in the loss column, so they need to make up 2 games in 4 weeks.
Correct. That's where they might get bit. Is that tie by the Giants? If one team finishes, I don't know, you want to give the Detroit an 8-9?
I think 9 gets them in, though.
No, I'm saying if they finished at 8-9.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Is that going to be – because if they're 8-9 and the Giants are 8-7-1, 8-7-1 would knock out 8-9 or 8-8-1. 8-8-1, excuse me. 8-8-1, the head-to-head tie-breaking game would not factor in. The Giants would win that. So that's where that tie helped them.
Yeah, so this is how crazy next week is, right? Because both teams are going to walk in, Giants and Washington, 7-5-1. They tied the first game. Washington right now is the 6th seed. I don't think people realize this right now. Washington's the 6th seed and the Giants are the 7th seed. If Seattle and Detroit both need to take care of business and win next week, because one of them will be able to jump. But I think the Seattle free fall, I'll admit, I didn't see this coming because I thought Geno Smith and that offense was playing well enough, and now they're banged up on the offense, and their defense can't stop a lick.
Yeah, I kind of lost faith in Seattle when they gave up 40 to Vegas. I kind of figured they had hit their kind of wall, and then they won last week, and you're like, okay, maybe have they figured some things out? No, I think Seattle is what they are. They exceeded expectations, and now they're basically who we thought they are. Although it's interesting, this is a team that has 2 talented wide receivers. Their offensive line is good. It's not great, but it's better than it was ever in the Russell Wilson era there. They have a quarterback that's been playing at a borderline MVP level. They had a really good young running back there. He was hurt yesterday, obviously. Their defense is their problem. They do have some talent on that defense. Their corners are very good. They can't stop the run. That's been their problem. Seattle just gives up too many yards on the ground. But I think that they had kind of hit the wall a little bit there. And, quite frankly, the Giants, I think, hit the wall about 4 or 5 weeks ago. Look, give them some credit for where they've got, but their schedule's brutal down the stretch here. I thought this game against Philadelphia was key for them. And I know it was a tall task, but you're at home, you're in the division. Can you just muck it up and make it ugly enough? They could not, because now Washington, they tie in New York last week. Then they get to sit and watch you and scout you for a second week and then get ready for you all this week, and you have to go to Washington. I don't see any way New York goes down there and figures out a way to win. So I have them losing this week. I had them losing this week before the Eagles game started. That's why I felt that game yesterday was so important for them, because then they play Minnesota. They've got a brutal stretch coming up the rest of the way.
I'm glad you brought this up. Commanders, Vikings, Colts, Eagles. Do the New York Football Giants finish 500 or worse?
I said about 4 or 5 weeks ago, I don't know how they get to 9. I just don't see 2. Now, obviously, they can go to Washington. I don't see it happening. I think Washington's playing really well. The one game they have a shot is the Colts game. I don't see them beating Minnesota. They don't match up well there. And Philadelphia, it depends. Now, Philadelphia, what's locked up? I think Philadelphia's second unit could probably hang with New York right now. And that's I'm not joking. Their second offensive line, Philadelphia, probably is still a top 15 unit in the league. If you put that second offensive line out there and said, this is our starting line for the full season, you're winning games with that group of guys. So I don't know. I mean, to me, I see it tough for the Giants to get 2 more. Washington, on the other hand, I think that they have a shot to win at least 2 more, including one against the Giants. So that puts the Giants in a really tough spot. But that last team, that number 7 team, you're picking between the Giants, Seattle, and probably Detroit right now.
I'm looking at Washington's schedule, too. I just pulled it up. After the Giants, they got the 49ers. And then they end up with the Cowboys. So don't you think if Washington wins this game, are they
Who do they have in between there?
Cleveland.
Right. That's why I say I think I see Washington with 2 getting 2 more. That would get them to 9. I think 9's the definitive number to get solidly in there. If you're not at 9, now you're in that mess with everybody else. But no, I don't think they're beating San Francisco. And what's the Dallas game mean?
Exactly. It might not mean anything for Dallas if the Eagles have everything clinched because you're going to be entrenched in the 5. I want to ask you this too, since we'll bring back up the Eagles here. Do you think they clinch everything by Christmas Eve?
Yeah, likely. I mean, for the Dallas fans, it has been about Christmas Eve. And I think you and I have both kind of contended. Yeah, you're going to need a lot to go right, though, by Christmas Eve for that game to mean anything, which meant you needed the Eagles to slip up in a game that essentially didn't have any meaning. That wasn't a game they were going to be an underdog. The Eagles are not going to be an underdog. They would have to lose to a team that you didn't expect them to lose to. New York, Chicago next week. They didn't lose to New York. They didn't lose to Green Bay. They didn't lose to Tennessee. A lot of Cowboy fans were hoping that they were going to slip up to Tennessee, and then that would close the gap to 1. And then on Christmas Eve, the Cowboys could beat them and tie them. And then 2 weeks to go, somebody slips up. That has not happened. So if Philadelphia wins against the Bears next week and then beats Dallas the final week, that's it. Match over, period, point blank. So, no, I think that it will likely, if Philadelphia wins on Christmas Eve, and at this point, that's up in the air. I mean, we're 2 weeks down the line. I don't know what the injury situations are going to be for these two teams. Philadelphia is getting healthier. That's only a feather in their cap, but I don't think it's far-fetched to say that Dallas could win that game and prolong that number 1 seed battle. But if Philadelphia wins next week, it could all be sealed up on Christmas Eve. And then we can watch the Sixers on Christmas Day and blame Doc Rivers for everything.
Well, we always do anyway. We can find a way to blame Doc Rivers for what? How much did they win by last night? 20?
I don't know, but it beat at 59, I think, at one point, or 52 or something like that.
Yeah, he ended up at 53. I was listening to the game on the way home. So, but I did want to ask this too, Mike. Not only is Jalen Hurts going to be the MVP, but can Nick Sirianni win Coach of the Year?
Can he? Sure. I mean, how many people had the Eagles peg the Eagles going 12-1 at this point, but possibly 15-2 or 16-1, which, by the way, that's part of why you would win Coach of the Year, because you almost need every bit of 16-1 or 15-2 to get that number 1 seed. That is the part that is underrated in this whole situation. Is it's easy to be it's not easy to be the best team, but it's easy to say, hey, they were the best team, they had the most talent. But to not stub your toe, to not trip up, and not do it when you have teams. Look, you could have potentially a 14-3 Minnesota team finishes the 2 seed, and you could have a whatever Dallas team, maybe they have 3 or 4 losses, as the 5 seed. You would need every bit of being 16-1 or 15-2 to be the number 1 seed. And that is why I think Sirianni should be highly considered. Like, to me, Sirianni is a very interesting character in this whole
process
season. Who is he? What is he? What is he he doesn't call the plays, what is his overlining role of why this team is so good? And I think it shows, like, having someone set that culture. The players love playing for him. He's running down into the end zone, celebrating when they score a touchdown. He's just a part of it, as the players are. And I think it's not easy to ask the players to play this hard and with this focus and this intensity every single week, especially when you keep winning like this, and you can easily shut it down. And he has them constantly focused on something bigger. And that is what I think his role is, and why it's so underrated. Because when we look at a coach, we think of, well, he calls the plays. He's a great offensive mind. He's a great defensive mind. He's a great at this. We're not sure what Sirianni's great at, but whatever it is, it's working.
But you're right, though. Like, even when the Eagles slipped just once this year, Dallas slipped the next week, and then Minnesota slipped to Dallas the following week. So it's like the Eagles never lost anything at all. And now the Eagles have a commanding lead on home field advantage, and they have a commanding lead in the NFC East. You're right. Like, so many things could have went wrong for this team this year. They could have lost to the Packers. The Titans could have given them a better game. No, like, this team plays better every single week. There is a bad loss on the Eagles schedule, but you're going to lose games in the NFL. So is there a bad loss? Is there really anything to say, like, about this team where you're just like, Okay, like the only way that they're going to lose right now is if they beat themselves.
I mean, realistically, the other teams that are in the mix here, they've all had a chance when Philadelphia lost that game to keep the pressure on. And for the most part, they have. And then Minnesota loses to Detroit, and, that Green Bay Dallas game is going to be the one that ultimately I think we look back for Dallas' season and say, look, you both played Green Bay. Philadelphia found a way to beat them. They didn't play their best, but they found a way to win that game, and you did not. And that's the game that ultimately has a 2-game gap plus the head-to-head matchup. If Dallas beats Green Bay, a team they should have taken care of business of that stinks out loud, this is a whole different conversation we're probably happening right now. But they were not focused enough to win that game against a bad Green Bay team, and that right now is looming large in this race.
Another game, too, you can say with the Cowboys is week 1. I know it was week 1, but you lost to Tampa, who's not a good football team. Oh, by the way, with your all-world quarterback, Dak Prescott, I know they love to put out that excuse. Cooper Rush. Well, you mean the Cooper Rush that was undefeated going into the Eagles game? That Cooper Rush? The guy that you were manufacturing quarterback controversies with Dak Prescott, that one? I just feel like, I said this to Tone earlier, I just feel like there's a lot of excuses with that franchise of why they're not as good as they should be.
Yeah, and it's funny because with the Eagles playing the Giants this week, a big theme, it's Giants week. And most Eagles fans, for whatever reason, seem to be more into Eagles Cowboys. I've always been Eagles Giants. The Eagles Giants week is the one for me. And people say, why? It's the Cowboys. They say the Cowboys is a manufactured Hallmark holiday. I don't give a crap about the Cowboys, quite frankly. There's no reason why Eagles fans should give them any more attention than they need. We're the problem. Eagles fans are the problem. We shouldn't be Eagles Cowboys is our whole year. No, it's Eagles Giants. Giants fans understand civic pride. They know their zip code. When you have a game against two teams that love their teams because of where they are from and what they represent so much, that's the game we should be attracted to. Instead of this wonky Dallas thing where these fans are living all over why do we give them credence? That's our fault. Blame the Eagles fans for giving this rivalry more credence than it deserves, because Cowboy fans don't care about the Eagles game at all down there in Dallas.
Yeah. By the way, I'm sure you saw the ESPN FPI thing where the Cowboys had like a 50% chance to win the Super Bowl and the Eagles had a 30% chance last week. I'll never forget what my dad texted me about it. And basically, I won't repeat the curse words in it, but he goes, how the heck did ESPN or Jerry Jones manufacture this? And he turned off the channel.
I don't know what the formula is they come up with. Look, it's like your fantasy football league in CBS Sports. I know you're CBS. Who comes up with what percentage points my guy is going to get? Because guess what? They never come close. No, last night my score said that Justin Herbert was going to get me another. He didn't come close to that. Now, he had a good game last night, but he didn't get the amount of points that whatever CBS Sports fantasy football formula was. These formulas that come up are made for television conversations. Nobody has any idea that Dallas has a 50% chance of making it. Why? Why would they have a 50%?
But they're going to have to play all the playoff games on the road. Like, are you saying, okay, yeah, I'll give you they beat Tampa Bay in the first game, but you still got to go to Philly on the road where you got, I'll be honest, you got your butt kicked the first time.
Yeah, I don't like. To me, this is a producer behind the scenes saying, you know what's really going to get people talking about our show?
Our formula.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's put the Cowboys at the top of the list, and that'll get everybody up in arms, and everybody will be talking about it. It's an easy formula to get people talking. There's no merit to it in any. There's just no rhyme or reason why and how they come up with that number.
I still remember, I think it was last year. I don't know if you ever heard about the YouTube guy for the Cowboys. His name's Scooter Magruder or something like that. I don't know if you ever seen him.
Say it again.
You ever hear the YouTube guy for the Cowboys? He's popular on Twitter. His name's Scooter Magruder. Did you ever hear him? Okay, so the guy has like 1 million followers, right? And I called him out last year because he was like riling up Eagles fans. I'm like, Eagles fans, why do you care what this nothing has to say? And he goes, I'm something and you're nothing. Look how many followers I got. I'm like, I'm an actual reporter. You're just a fan, dude. Like, you're nothing. And
Well, listen,
and it shut him up for a while. Like you put him in his place.
This is, and look, I understand there's a rivalry between the Eagles and Cowboys. It dates back to, them being very good, the Eagles beating them finally in 80, that springboarding them to the Super Bowl. And much of it is, Dallas gets all this national attention. But, quite frankly, it's over attention. And it's getting to the point where, look, I'm 45 years old. I was alive and in high school when they were dominant in the the 90s with Troy Aikman, Michael Irvin.
Legit good.
They were legitimate good. They have not been good since. You're going on generations of fans now. I've done shows with people in their 30s. They've never seen the Cowboys be any good. Never. And yet, people talk about them and act like it's some big deal to beat this team. Look, they're good this year. This is a good team. But over the last 30 years, they have been completely irrelevant in terms of wins and losses. So why Eagles fans continue to give them credence, that's on Eagles fans. If everybody just ignored them, well, their fans are arrogant. Who cares? Yeah. That's part of the reason why I think the thing is a hallmark. Their fans just don't understand the game of football. They're just not smart football fans. They're casual fans who happen to like the team that was good at an era, and they jumped on the wagon. That's why their fans are arrogant. It's not arrogance, it's ignorance. They're just not smart.
Yeah, it's funny, too, because they like the same teams. It's Cowboys, Lakers, Yankees, Duke basketball. You pick your bandwagon, is what it is. Or who was popular on ESPN in the 90s. And that's what I try to tell people. And when I tweet my Eagles stats, I'm not doing it to rip the Cowboys or anything. I'm just doing it to tell you, guys, feel good about your football team. I'll do it for the Cowboys, too. But it's
Listen,
one of the...
I have been... Over the last 5 years or so, this Cowboys team has been the more talented team. Consistently more talented
every year
than Philadelphia, and they continue to come up short. And I fall into the trap on my show of saying, look, I hate to say it, guys, but Dallas is just a good football team. They're better. They were better in probably 16, 17, 18, 19. They had the better roster. They're horribly coached then. And I think right now, the one difference is Mike McCarthy as the coach hasn't gotten in the way. He has not gotten in the way. The only game he got in the way was the game they lost against Green Bay. He got in the way in that game. But they have done a good job of him getting out of the way. They're well coached on defense. When Kellen Moore is calling a good game, he's really good. Now, he has games where he goes off track a little bit. But one of the things that I thought he did well with Cooper Rush was he leaned on the run game more. He allowed the running game to kind of take over. And then my question was, when Dak got back, was he going to go back to Dak's offense or keep now he's had it kind of hybrid. Yesterday, big game for Pollard catching the ball. They kind of mixed it up with the two running backs there. But ultimately, the coach has been when Garrett was there, he was the problem. McCarthy's been the problem the last couple of years. So far, McCarthy has not gotten in the way. I have no problem acknowledging that team is very good and highly capable. Quite frankly, I do my NFL Fine Five on Wednesdays. I had the Eagles 1 and the Cowboys 2 last week. I think they're the second best team in the league.
I do too. I will say this: if the Eagles don't go to Super Bowl, I think the Cowboys are going to. And we're going to be quite honest here. I think they're good enough. I don't know if Dak can get them to where they need to go. I think he's a really good quarterback, but he's not elite. But they do have Ezekiel Elliott playing better because he's not getting 20 carries a game. They got Tony Pollard, who's basically been a breakout star, which he should have been years ago. I like their receivers. I like their offensive line. I love their defense. It's a really good football team. It's just they're not 12-1. That's it.
Yeah, and the one thing I question with that team down the line is when will McCarthy and that coaching staff rear their ugly heads? What will be the thing that happens to them? And by the way, they're not a very disciplined football team.
No,
they're
not.
Get penalized a lot. But if they're the things you're talking about, that's telling you they have a very good 53. At the beginning of this year, I said I like Philadelphia's 53 better, But Dallas, I think, had the check mark in quarterback and best defensive player. I'm not so sure that check mark is for the quarterback anymore. So what does that do to Philadelphia? Has the better 53. Now they have the better quarterback. Is Micah Parsons leading that defense enough of a way to say, all right, Dallas is the better team? Right now, I don't think that's the case. But if you go back to bad losses and this and that, Kansas City, I've been barking on all the shows that they're not good enough. That team is not good enough. And people want to tell me I'm wrong because they have Patrick Mahomes. I get they have Patrick Mahomes, but the 53-man roster is not good enough. Kansas City is not good enough. Their defense isn't good enough. I tell you what, Pacheco, now that they've got him rolling
I was going to say to you, what about Pacheco now that he's kind of become that feature back? We didn't know who was going to be that.
Right, now that they got him rolling a little bit, have they answered their running game issues a little bit more? I would say wait and see. Let's see how much they use him. But he looked good the last couple weeks now. He had 16 carries, I think, 2 weeks ago. Last night he helped close that game out. But they don't have playmakers on the outside. Their 53 is limited. Buffalo, we have seen Buffalo struggle in games where, look, when they need to run the ball, they don't run the ball all that well. Their run game is highly reliant on Josh Allen. Their defense has some holes without Von Miller. I think that's an issue for them in a playoff game. If they need that big sack or that big stop, where are they getting it? So that's a team that you have to take a look at that we had as a legitimate Super Bowl top 5. So to me, Dallas and Philly are both ahead of those two. The wild card is San Francisco with Purdy. Obviously, if you watched them yesterday, he looked fine. But give me a couple more weeks to project where they're going to be.
And a better team. Mike Gill, always a pleasure having you on, my friend. I unfortunately will not be on the Sports Bash tonight. Boyertown's got to go 4-0 in basketball. We got a big game tonight. But I will see you, I believe, on Wednesday.
Yes, indeed. Yes, tonight, actually, I'll be at Ocean, and I was going to tell you, I have Sal Powell joining me for the final hour of the show from 5 to 6. So,
yeah. So, hey, you know what? Sal Powell always should take precedence.
He will be live on set. He'll be live on set with me out at Ocean tonight.
Sal Powell was in New Jersey yesterday, so he looked like he had a pretty good time at that game yesterday.
Yeah, he did the game for ESPN Radio. He did the color.
Yeah, Sal's the man. I love talking to Sal. He's always a good dude, and I love how he comes on your show. I believe he was actually on before me the other week when they had the Sunday night game, I think, or the Monday night. I forget when it was.
Yeah, he's been bouncing. He normally does Friday at 3, but he's done a couple different times based on his schedule this year. But
he's a busy
Fridays
man.
At 3 is generally when he's on. But today he's going to do a special from 5 to 6 and come on out to Ocean. So if anybody's around Ocean, stop on by.
Pre-game listening for me, too, before I have to coach tonight. So, anyway, Mike, once again, always a pleasure, my friend. I'll talk to you Wednesday.
All right, everybody. See you.
Okay, well, that's Mike Gill, everybody. Birds 365, Joey McDonald and John McMullen coming up next. But wanted to get this final point out. Whenever someone wants to talk trash to you about the Philadelphia Eagles, just remind them of this. They're 12-1. They have a top 2 offense in the NFL. They have the highest scoring offense in the NFL. They lead the NFL in sacks. They lead the NFL in turnovers. Oh, I guess we could complain about that. They didn't have a turnover this game. Or did they? I don't remember. You know what? I was writing stuff in the fourth quarter. Can't remember. Oh, no, they didn't have an interception. That's what it was. They didn't have an interception. So just remind people of that when you want to talk about how good the Philadelphia Eagles are. I'll have plenty of stats coming on my Twitter today to further back your claim, besides the fact that they're 12-1. Once again, Birds 365 is coming up next. You could catch my Darius Slay story from the game on CBSSports.com. I'll have a couple other things coming on CBS Sports from the game today. And once again, my name is Jeff Kerr. Have a good day, guys.